When Colbert tried to corner Denzel on live TV, he didn't just push back. He burned the script and walked off the set. The studio lights were warm, inviting, the kind that bathe everything in gold and make people lean forward in their seats just a little more. The energy in the room wasn't just high, it was electric. The Late Show with Stephen Colbert was live, and the audience knew tonight wasn't just another round of political satire or quirky celebrity plugs. Denzel Washington was in the building. The applause hit hard when they introduced him. That kind of applause that's less about excitement and more about respect. A Hollywood icon, a man whose very name carried weight. He stepped onto the stage with that easy, commanding walk. Confident, but never cocky. Denzel Washington didn't need to perform. He just needed to show up. Colbert greeted him with his signature mix of charm and sarcasm. They sat across from each other, two professionals playing a familiar game. Jokes flew. Stories about movie sets, childhood memories. The crowd laughed on cue. Denzel told a story about directing his last film. Colbert cracked a line about awards season. The rhythm was smooth, like two jazz musicians trading solos. Everything was exactly as it should be. But then something changed. It was subtle at first. A shift in posture, a pause before the next question. Colbert glanced at his cards. His smile tightened, the kind of smile that says, "I'm about to switch gears." And Denzel, ever perceptive, saw it coming. He adjusted slightly in his seat. Not much, just a minor shift, but enough. Colbert leaned in, hands clasped. The laughter faded. The crowd could feel it too, the tone, the pacing, the way the room exhaled in unison. No one said it out loud, but they all knew the real conversation was about to begin. Because Colbert didn't just bring Denzel on to talk movies, not tonight. He brought him on for a moment. And in the back of the room, where producers hovered behind cameras and interns clutched clipboards, someone whispered under their breath, "Here we go." The storm hadn't hit yet, but you could smell the pressure in the air. And Denzel? He just waited, calm, focused, like a man who knew exactly what was coming. Colbert shifted in his seat, letting the silence stretch just long enough to stir the room. His smile remained, but there was something behind it now. Intent. He tapped the edge of his blue note card like it was a trigger and said, "So Denzel, I read something you said recently that I'd love to ask about." The crowd leaned in. It wasn't a joke setup anymore. The rhythm had changed. "You talked about fatherhood," Colbert continued, "about discipline, respect, even faith. Powerful stuff." He nodded slowly, eyes locked on Denzel. "But don't you think that view is a bit—" He hesitated just enough to let the moment breathe. Outdated? A subtle ripple of tension moved through the audience, the kind that makes people glance sideways, unsure if they should laugh or listen. Denzel didn't flinch. Colbert wasn't done. "I mean, in today's world, with all we've learned, all we're still learning, shouldn't we be redefining those ideas, evolving past the old-school notions of masculinity and authority?" It wasn't a question. It was a setup. The kind Colbert was known for, the kind that looked polite on the surface but had sharp teeth underneath. He had done this before, with politicians, authors, influencers. Get them comfortable, then twist. Clip the reaction, go viral. That's how the game worked. But this wasn't just any guest. Denzel sat quietly for a beat, eyes steady, not defensive, not angry, just reading the room, watching the stage being set, brick by brick. He leaned back slightly in his chair, one leg crossed over the other, calm, measured, like a man who'd been in bigger rooms with sharper questions and higher stakes. The audience didn't know where to look, at Colbert, still poised and waiting, or at Denzel, who hadn't yet said a word, but somehow still owned the moment. It was quiet now, no laughter, no applause. Just that kind of silence that says, this might be bigger than TV. And somewhere backstage, a producer glanced at the monitor and muttered, "If he answers this the way I think he will, We're not going to be able to cut it. Because something was about to shift, and everyone could feel it. Denzel didn't blink. The question had landed exactly how Colbert intended, framed just sharp enough to provoke, just vague enough to twist. But Denzel wasn't flustered. He didn't shift, didn't smile, didn't even glance toward the audience. He just sat still, present, centered. Then, slowly, he leaned forward, elbows on knees, hands folded, and in a voice as steady as a metronome, he said, "You're assuming values don't evolve, but maybe some truths don't need to." The line dropped like a hammer wrapped in velvet. A split second of stunned silence, followed by a low murmur from the crowd. Some clapped hesitantly at first, then more. A few gasps. Somewhere in the back, a crew member whispered, "Oh, wow." Colbert smiled, but it was tighter now, controlled, like he hadn't expected Denzel to fire back so quickly, so smoothly. He opened his mouth, but Denzel wasn't finished. "I believe in change," Denzel said, voice calm, deliberate, but not at the cost of wisdom. We're so quick to call something outdated just because it doesn't fit a trend, but character, discipline, integrity, those aren't trends, those are foundations. The audience leaned in. He wasn't grandstanding, he wasn't preaching, he was speaking. And there was a difference, a big one. Colbert tried to interject with a quip, something about evolving standards, but Denzel didn't bite. He let the host talk, waited. And when Colbert paused for breath, Denzel leaned in just slightly and asked, "Isn't it ironic? We spend so much time trying to move forward, we never ask what we're leaving behind." The audience murmured again, louder this time, clapping, not explosive, but building. Colbert's rhythm was off. The beat had changed, and Denzel had the mic now, even when he wasn't speaking. The energy in the studio shifted. Everyone felt it. Colbert had tossed a spark. Denzel returned fire with a torch, and it was only the beginning. Colbert straightened his note cards like a man regaining his footing after a slip. He chuckled lightly, trying to reset the vibe, but the tension wouldn't lift. Not this time. The easy laughter from earlier felt miles away. "So," Colbert said, his tone more pointed now, "are you saying we should just stick to traditional roles? Traditional definitions of strength, of gender, of authority?" He wasn't smiling anymore. Denzel gave a quiet breath through his nose. His posture didn't change. Still grounded, still calm. But his eyes had sharpened, not angry, focused. "I'm saying," he replied, "we've gotten real comfortable redefining everything except accountability." The crowd reacted, this time with more than murmurs. There were clear reactions now, audible mms, a few scattered claps, even a soft whistle near the back. Colbert leaned in, eyes narrowed. But doesn't that kind of thinking, let's be honest, exclude people? Isn't it dangerous to say there's one way to be a man, one way to be strong? Denzel didn't hesitate. "What's dangerous," he said, voice steady, "is confusing freedom with the absence of structure. See, real strength isn't about dominating, it's about leading, serving, being dependable when it's hard. That's not exclusion, that's responsibility." It hit. Colbert blinked. The studio lights felt hotter now. The audience didn't know whether to clap or wait. The rhythm of the show, the one Colbert usually orchestrated with flawless timing, was gone. Denzel was rewriting the beat. "I'm not against change," Denzel continued, "but I'm against pretending that the things that built us, discipline, sacrifice, faith, don't matter anymore, that we've somehow outgrown them. We haven't. We just got distracted." Colbert looked for a pivot, a new angle, something to regain control. But every point he raised, Denzel dismantled with quiet precision. What started as an interview was now a chess match. And Colbert? He was several moves behind. The crew knew it, the crowd felt it. And Denzel, he was just getting started. Colbert was losing the room, and he could feel it. The usual formula wasn't landing. Not with Denzel, not tonight. But he wasn't ready to give up the moment. This was his stage. He leaned in, elbows on the desk, voice wrapped in polite skepticism. "But Denzel," he said, tone smooth but sharp beneath the surface, "don't you think there's a risk here? That views like yours, about toughness, about faith, about roles, could be, well, dangerous? Maybe even harmful in today's culture?" He said it lightly, like it was a simple question, but the weight behind it hung heavy in the room. The audience stopped breathing. Denzel didn't flinch. He didn't laugh. He didn't shift in his chair. Instead, he let the silence marinate. His eyes drifted past Colbert, past the cameras, and locked on the audience. Not with defiance, with clarity. And then he said it. "What's dangerous is mistaking confusion for progress." Boom. The studio erupted. Claps. Gasps. Some people stood. Others looked around like they couldn't believe what they just heard. The camera cut to stunned faces. Crew members exchanged looks. Even the band stopped mid-riff. It wasn't just the line, it was the delivery. Calm, controlled, razor-sharp without raising his voice. Colbert blinked, clearly stunned. He opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time, he didn't have a quick comeback. He wasn't hosting anymore. He was reacting. And the crowd? They were no longer here for his punchlines. They were with Denzel. The vibe shifted completely. No longer a talk show. It had become something else, something bigger, a moment, the kind that would be clipped, rewatched, and dissected across every screen by morning. Because Denzel hadn't just responded, he'd reframed the entire conversation, and the room knew it. Colbert forced a smile, eyes darting toward the band like he was looking for an exit cue. Then he tried to reset the tone with a joke, something about Denzel needing to run for office. It didn't land. A few polite laughs fluttered out, but most of the audience stayed quiet, focused. The warmth that usually filled the studio when Colbert riffed was gone, replaced by something colder. He was no longer steering the ship. Denzel sat still, composed. He didn't take the bait. Instead, he leaned in, not physically, but with presence. Like every word he said carried weight, because it did. "You want to talk about danger?" he said. "Let's talk about what happens when truth becomes optional, when feelings matter more than facts, when disagreement is treated like hate." Colbert shifted in his seat. The control was slipping. Denzel continued, voice low but clear. "We don't need more yelling. We don't need more labels. What we need is real conversation, real dialogue. That means hearing things you might not like. That means talking about discipline, structure, faith, not because they're trendy, but because they work." A quiet murmur ran through the room. This wasn't what anyone expected from a late-night interview, but no one was looking at their phones. No one was zoning out. Every eye was locked in. Colbert tried again, softer this time. "But don't you think times have changed?" "They have," Denzel replied. "But truth doesn't bend just because the wind does. And if we keep trading substance for slogans, we're going to forget what being grounded even looks like." It wasn't preachy. It was real. Colbert leaned back, exhaled slowly. For once, he wasn't sure where to take it. And in that moment, it was clear. The host wasn't in control anymore. Denzel was. And the room? The room knew it. Colbert shuffled his note cards like they held the last card in a losing hand. The applause had faded. The jokes weren't hitting. The audience wasn't on his side anymore, and he could feel it. But he wasn't going to let the segment die without a fight. Not yet. So he leaned in again, voice tight, almost rehearsed. "Well, Denzel," he said, forcing a smile, "if we follow that logic, wouldn't it mean we just ignore social progress? That we cling to outdated systems just because they're comfortable?" It was a layered question, loaded, the kind designed not to be answered but to trap. But Denzel saw it for what it was. He paused, just long enough for the tension to thicken. Then, with a calm, deliberate tone that sliced through the silence like a scalpel, he said, "You didn't bring me here for a conversation. You brought me here to make a clip." Dead Silence. A few people in the audience shifted in their seats. One of the camera operators blinked and pulled back slightly from the zoom. A stage manager at the side of the curtain lowered her headset mic, eyes wide. Even Colbert froze. His trademark smirk faded, not completely, but enough to reveal what was underneath. Discomfort. Denzel hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't pointed fingers. But he had pulled back the curtain, exposed the script. And in doing so, he cracked the illusion of the format. Colbert sat back, gripping his cards just a little tighter. "You brought me here," Denzel continued, "to fit into a headline. You wanted a soundbite, something you could spin, clip, share, but that's not truth. That's performance." The studio didn't erupt this time. It froze. And the weight of those words? It wasn't just aimed at Colbert, it was aimed at the entire machine. The culture of conversation as content, of values turned into viral bait. Colbert didn't respond. He couldn't. Because everyone knew Denzel had just ended the conversation. And the silence that followed, that was the sound of reality crashing through the showbiz facade. Colbert tried to recover. He forced a laugh, quick, brittle, reached for his coffee mug like the moment hadn't just imploded on live television. "Well," he said, eyes darting toward the band, "we'll be right back with more from—" But he didn't get to finish, because Denzel stood, not angrily, not with drama, just calmly. He turned slightly to the audience, nodded once, and said, "Thank you for your time." No rant, no mic drop, no dramatic stare down, just dignity, the kind that didn't need a spotlight to be felt. Gasps rippled through the room. Some people clapped, unsure at first, then more confidently. A few stood up, not out of shock, but out of respect. One person near the back even whispered, "Wow." The cameras kept rolling. Colbert froze. His mouth was still half open from the sentence he never got to finish. His eyes followed Denzel as he walked off the set, past the cameras, past the band, past the edge of the lights. No security, no staff. Just Denzel walking out like a man who'd said what needed to be said, and left. The control room buzzed in Colbert's earpiece, but he didn't respond. For once, the late-night host, the guy who always had the perfect quip, the clever recovery, had nothing. He just sat there, staring into the camera, no smile, no punchline. Just a face caught between disbelief and the dawning realization that he'd just become the moment, not the master of it. In the silence, the audience waited. No one knew what to do. And for a show built on timing, punchlines, and polished segments, that moment, raw, unscripted, real, was the one no one would ever forget. Because Denzel didn't just walk off the show, he walked off on his terms and left the world to catch up. By the time the episode's credits rolled, the internet was already on fire. Clips of the exchange flooded Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, every platform within reach. Cell phone recordings from inside the studio popped up alongside high-definition snippets ripped straight from the broadcast. The titles came fast. Denzel destroys Colbert, live on air. Denzel Washington walks off show after epic showdown. Colbert gets exposed in real time by Denzel. Within an hour, the hashtag #sign Denzel versus Colbert was trending worldwide. Reaction videos dropped like dominoes. YouTubers paused and analyzed every second. TikTok creators lip-synced Denzel's line, "You didn't bring me here for a conversation," over dramatic music. Twitter lit up with side-by-side memes comparing Denzel to a lion calmly walking away from a circus fire. Colbert's usual fan base was split. Some tried to spin it. Stephen was just doing his job, asking tough questions, but others weren't buying it. Denzel walked in and reminded everyone what authenticity looks like, one tweet read. This wasn't a meltdown, this was a masterclass. Celebrities chimed in. Some praised Denzel for his composure, calling it a rare moment of unfiltered truth. Others defended Colbert, warning that walking off sets a bad precedent for discourse. News outlets jumped in. Some ran neutral headlines, "Tense moment on the Late Show goes viral." Others chose sides. Colbert ambushed by Denzel's calm brutality. Denzel Washington's dangerous comments sparked controversy. Inside the studio, Colbert's team scrambled. Statements were drafted. PR reps held emergency meetings. Edits of the episode were uploaded with slightly altered framing, cutting the moment short, redirecting traffic to their official page. But it didn't matter. The internet had already decided. And the raw, unedited clips, the ones where Denzel calmly walked off set without raising his voice, were the ones people kept watching, sharing, quoting. Not because it was loud, but because it was real. Denzel didn't post, didn't tweet, didn't drop a cryptic Instagram story, no follow-up video, no statement from his reps. He just disappeared. And somehow, that made it even more powerful. A week later, he appeared on a small podcast. No flashy set, no live audience, just a quiet studio and a host who asked gently if he had anything to say about what happened. Denzel took a sip of water, paused. Then he said, "I wasn't trying to win anything, I was just being real." That was it. No drama, no ego, just truth. But outside that calm space, the noise still raged. Pundits argued over what it all meant. Was it about free speech, about respecting guests, about the blurring line between journalism and entertainment? Some called it a win for authenticity. Others called it performative rebellion. Everyone had a take. Everyone wanted a piece of it. Think pieces flooded in. The Colbert clip exposes our cultural divide. Denzel didn't just walk off, he walked away from the script. Why that interview still has us talking? College campuses dissected the moment in media studies classes. Commentators debated whether Denzel had walked out or walked through the noise. But in the middle of all of it, one truth stood out, undeniable and unshakable. Something had shifted. People were listening differently now, questioning what counted as a conversation, wondering what we lose when we chase clips instead of connection. And through all the noise, one moment remained burned into the memory of everyone who watched it. Denzel, calm as ever, standing up, thanking the crowd, walking off. No mic drop, no anger, just gravity, just grace. And maybe that's why it hit so hard, because sometimes the loudest mic drop is the one followed by silence. This story was brutal, but this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.